The freighter dropped through the honey-colored haze of Ketridge Station's atmosphere dome, and Jace Wakefield felt the old warning prickling in his joints like static under the skin. He'd learned to trust it. For decades of prowling the Meridian colonies for lost craft and half-myth machines had taught him that something always shifted in the air just before an unbelievable find. "Your jaw's doing that thing again," said Lyra from the co-pilot's chair. Lyra was very in short, compact, and all sharp focus. Her skin carried a cool, metallic sheen, and 3 narrow ridges ran from her brow to the back of her skull like delicate armor. She claimed they helped her sense minute pressure changes. Jace suspected they were mostly useful for making humans feel like underdesigned prototypes. "You grind your teeth whenever you smell profit," she added. "It's obnoxious, not profit," Jace said, adjusting the battered leather hat perched on his head, a genuine Earth relic from the early 21st century that had cost more than his first ship. He squinted at the landing pad swelling in the viewport. "History," Lyra snorted. "Sure, history with a price tag. This seller didn't just say, 'Here's something rare,'" Jace went on. "He sent authentication strings that match Imperial manufacturing codes. And what is it, exactly?" Jace grinned into his beard. "A Casari military hover bike." Lyra stared. The Casari didn't build hover bikes. Exactly. That single word hung between them. Sweet as a dare. According to public archives, the Casari engineered wall walkers, resonance rifles, fleet craft, elegant, terrifying things built like sculpture. But hover bikes? That was human frontier junk, a colonial convenience. Yet Jace had spent years collecting rumors that didn't fit the official histories. And those rumors whispered of a late-war prototype commissioned by the Casari Imperial Guard. A compact reconnaissance vehicle designed to vanish into terrain and return with secrets. A Phantom Stalker, the old fragments called it. Only a few hundred built. Most believed destroyed when the Casari homeworld collapsed, and the Great Harmonic there. Mysterious planetary resonance network went dark. "And your contact claims to have one," Lyra said carefully. "He claims nothing," Jace replied. "He has it." The ship settled onto the pad with a soft shudder. Before the engines finished cycling down, Jace was already unbuckling. "Try not to get conned," Lyra called after him. "Remember the Delphin incident? That was one time," he muttered. "You bought a vintage courier ship that turned out to be 3 smaller ships, welded together with scrap plating and hope. It flew," Jace protested, halfway down the ramp. "It screamed the entire way. I like character." Ketridge Station smelled like hot lubricant and wet plant life. Vines had threaded through vents and seams, draping overhead like purple-leafed chandeliers. The place had been built back when humanity was still learning how to trick gravity into behaving. And it showed rusted walls, flickering strips of light, corridors that felt too narrow for the century they'd been forced into. A thin man waited by the hangar entrance, hands twitching like nervous birds. "Mr. Wakefield," he said. "I'm Tovin." We spoke. Jace shook his hand. The grip was firm, palms rough. Someone who did labor, not just deals. "Call me Jace. This is Lyra. She's here to keep me from doing anything spectacularly stupid." "That sounds like a full-time job," Tovin said, a tired humor creasing his face. "You have no idea," Lyra said, deadpan. Tovin gestured them forward. "This way." They moved through a winding maze of industrial corridors. The deeper they went, the more the station seemed to surrender to the jungle creeping through its bones moss on panels. Vines wedging open old doors, a humid warmth that felt like breathing inside a lung. Jace kept his jacket closed. It looked like worn leather, but there was discreet plating beneath it, collector's common sense. His bracer's status lights blinked green, defensive screen ready. Tovin glanced back as they walked. "You wanted to know how I got it." "I do," Jace said. "Because officially, it shouldn't exist." Tovin's mouth tightened, then softened into something like pride. "My grandmother served as a medic during the Boundary War. Front lines. Evac zones. The place's history likes to summarize in one sentence." Jace listened closely. People didn't usually invent family stories that carried real weight. When the Casari world fell, Tovin continued, everything broke. Command structures, supply lines, law. Everyone grabbed whatever kept them alive. He stopped at a sealed door marked with faded warnings in multiple scripts. She found the bike in an abandoned guard barracks. "She stole a prototype," Lyra said. Tovin lifted a shoulder. "She always said she liberated it. War was ending. The Casari weren't going to need it anymore." He pressed his palm to the lock plate. Old mechanisms groaned and yielded, like a sleeping animal disturbed. Inside, a cramped storage unit packed with decades of station life debris. But none of it mattered, because at the center cot in a single overhead light, as if the station itself had decided to, spotlighted sat a machine that made Jace's breath stall. It was smaller than a standard colonial hover bike, low-slung, predatory. The hull wore matte gray-green, dusted but unscarred, shaped in curves that looked intentional rather than manufactured. The front cowling swept back like the skull of a hunting creature. Sensor clusters set where eyes would be, and the wheels, not wheels, rings. Hollow crystalline hoops, faintly iridescent even under dust, like glass holding a secret. Jace let out a slow, reverent sound. Oh, Lyra was already stepping in, fingertips hovering without touching. Her amber eyes flicked across seams, plates, microfasteners. "Stamping is consistent. Alloy composition looks right." She pointed to a small riveted plate. "Imperial serial format." Tovin's shoulders eased, as if he'd been bracing for disbelief for weeks. "So it's real." "It's real," Lyra confirmed. Jace circled it like a pilgrim around an altar, half afraid it would vanish if he blinked too hard. "The Casari built like artists," he murmured. "Even their war tools." Tovin nodded. "Grandmother rode it for years, apparently. Said it handled like it knew where she wanted to go before she did." "How long has it been stored?" Jace asked. 53 years. Tovin's voice turned wistful. "She settled on Ketridge when it was still a proper trade hub. Covered the bike, put it in storage, and life happened." Jace whistled softly. "And it's still intact. She passed 15 years ago. I didn't know the bike existed until last month. I was cleaning out her unit. Nearly fell over when I pulled the tarp." Jace finally reached out and ran his fingers along the curve of the chassis. The metal was cool, and textured like the sensation of leather translated into alloy. "Why sell it?" he asked quietly. "This could fetch enough at a proper auction to buy your own station." Tovin held his gaze. "I'm 73. My wife died 2 years ago. My kids live half a sector away and call when they remember." He swallowed. "I've got a room full of ghosts and a bike I can't ride." He nodded toward Jace. "I looked you up. Your museum on Harkin's world. You keep things. You preserve them. You don't just flip them." Lyra watched Jace's face, reading the microshifts the way Velians did. She said nothing. Tovin's voice roughened. "Grandmother used to say history shouldn't rot in closets." Something tightened in Jace's chest. Responsibility, privilege, and the strange ache of being entrusted with someone else's past. "I'll pay you fairly," he said. "More than fairly. And I'll make sure her name is part of the display, not a footnote." Tovin exhaled like he'd been holding air for years. "Then we have a deal." Payment and transport arrangements happened with the brisk competence Lyra brought to every negotiation. But Jace stayed with the bike, studying it like it might speak. Casari tech wasn't powered like human machines. Their systems ran on resonance cycling, capturing ambient energy and shaping it through harmonic patterns humans still didn't fully understand. Most Casari artifacts had gone inert after the Great Harmonic collapsed. Their world's death had been a silence that spread through their technology like frost. Still, not everything had failed. There were scattered reports of isolated devices persisting for years, maybe decades, as long as they weren't tied into the central network. Jace looked at the crystalline rings again and felt that itch deepen. Back at the museum on Harkin's world, the Phantom Stalker arrived in a temperature-stabilized pod. Jace supervised the unloading personally. His staff gathered as if they could sense the gravity of what was inside. Dex Moreno had restoration tech, stocky, grease-stained, and expressive in ways polite society didn't approve of. Circled the bike with open-mouthed awe. "Holy jumping, Jace. That's not." "It is," Jace said, unable to stop smiling. "Casari Imperial Guard Phantom Stalker. Complete." Dex made a noise that was halfway laugh, halfway prayer. "Do you know what you've brought me? That resonance system. Those crystal assemblies. This is like finding a living fossil." "It gets better," Jace said. Dex narrowed his eyes. "Oh no. I think it might still run." Dex stared as if Jace had confessed to juggling reactor cores for fun. "That's impossible, probably," Jace agreed. "But I want to try." The next days blurred into obsession. The workshop filled with diagrams, ancient fragments of Casari technical text, empty cups, and arguments that rose and fell like tides. The bike's condition was astonishing. Seals intact, no corrosion, crystalline structures free of the hairline fractures that plagued most surviving Casari artifacts. Whoever Constance had been, she'd mothballed it with meticulous care. The problem was the same one that haunted every Casari relic. No harmonic network, no obvious ignition method. Dex tapped the bike's exposed core housing. "This is the heart, the accumulator. If we prime it, it should draw power from ambient fields. But the Casari used harmonic signatures we can't replicate." Lyra folded her arms. Could we brute force it? Feed it power from a conventional source? Dex grimaced. Tried that on other Casari pieces. Either nothing happens, or the crystal matrix shatters like glass. Jace studied the accumulator. Under magnification, inside the crystal, micro-patterns twisted and repeated structured. Intentional, almost musical. What if we're thinking wrong? He said slowly. Dex looked up. I'm afraid to ask. What if the patterns are already there? Jace said. Just dormant? Waiting. Waiting for what? Lyra asked. Jace hesitated, because the answer sounded ridiculous in a workshop full of rational people. In the old texts, he said, the Casari wrote about awakening machines, ritual, singing, instruments. They treated technology like something you invited, not something you forced. Dex blinked hard. You want to serenade the hover bike. I want to introduce harmonic frequencies and see if the crystal resonates. That is dangerously close to superstition, Lyra said. The Casari never separated superstition and science the way we do, Jace replied. And this machine doesn't care what we call it. They set up the equipment that night. Harmonic generators positioned around the bike. Sensors clamped delicately to the accumulator. Emergency shields primed just in case Jace's worst-case scenario happened where part of the museum briefly became very exciting and then ceased to be anyone's concern. He run tones, simple frequencies, nothing. He tried patterns derived from translated Casari music fragments. Still nothing. Hours passed. Staff drifted away. Excitement fading into the resigned boredom of watching someone argue with physics. By deep night, only Lyra remained, perched in the corner with a book and a steady gaze. You should sleep, she said. One more attempt, Jace replied, voice hoarse. You've said that since yesterday. He rubbed his eyes. Maybe it was dead. Maybe the Phantom Stalker would always be a gorgeous corpse proof of what the Casari had been, and proof that even the greatest civilizations could fall silent. He stepped close and rested his hand on the bike's tank plating. And because exhaustion makes philosophers of us all, he spoke to it. You carried someone through a war, he murmured. You waited in darkness for half a century. Now you're in a place where people will know you existed, where they'll remember what you meant. He swallowed, felt foolish, but the words kept coming anyway. The Casari are gone, he said softly, but you survived. That matters. If there's anything left in you, any echo wake up, not for me, for Constance, for the story she protected. He closed his eyes. Under his palm, something thrummed. Jace's eyes snapped open. The crystalline rings glowed faint, bluish green, like deep ocean light. A slow pulse moved through them, steady as a heartbeat. Lyra's book hit the floor. What did you do? Nothing, Jace breathed. It's doing it. The glow spread from ring to frame, tracing the bike's contours with living luminescence. The accumulator vibrated, not a sound so much as a sensation in the bones. The sensors spiked. Dex, who had been half asleep at a console, jolted upright and stared at the readouts. The matrix is restructuring. It's like it remembers how to be itself, with a sound like a chord resolving. The bike engaged, not loud, not roaring, just as smooth, controlled hum that felt aware. A panel on the cowling lit with Casari script. Jace's translator implant struggled, then produced a rough rendering, systems nominal, awaiting operator. It wants to be ridden, Jace whispered. No, Lyra said instantly, absolutely not. Dex pointed at the still climbing energy readings. Jace, you don't know how stable this is. It's stable enough to boot, Jace said, and swung a leg over the seat before he could talk himself out of it. The seat reshaped beneath him, molding to his weight like responsive living material. The grips shifted to fit his reach. Foot pegs extended subtly. It's adapting, Jace said, awed. It's learning me. Lyra looked like she was calculating how many ways she could strangle him without leaving. Evidence. Be careful. Always, Jace lied automatically. He eased the control more thought than throttle, and the Phantom Stalker lifted. There was no mechanical struggle, no clunky negotiation with gravity. The bike moved the way intention moves, clean, immediate. He leaned left, it curved. He thought upward, it rose. It was less like driving and more like dancing with something that anticipated him. Jace guided it through the workshop door and out into the open night. He'd bought the surrounding fields for test run space where accidents wouldn't turn into tragedies. Stars glittered overhead. Cool wind swept across his face. He opened the throttle. Speed arrived like silence. Smooth, relentless, unreal. The world blurred. The crystalline rings left a fading trail of blue-green light behind him, like bioluminescent wake. He laughed wild, startled, unguarded, and the sound vanished into the wind. For an hour he rode, learning the bike the way you learn a new language, by trusting it, failing a little, trying again. The Phantom Stalker responded as if it were reading his reflexes and preferences, building a relationship in real time. When he finally returned, breathless and shaking with adrenaline, Lyra was waiting with her arms crossed. You are clinically insane, she said. Probably, Jace admitted, grinning like a child. He patted the bike's plating. But it's real. It's alive, in its own way. This changes everything we think we know about Casari engineering. Assuming you live long enough to write it down, Lyra muttered. 3 weeks later, the museum unveiled the Phantom Stalker exhibit. Jace spent the time verifying sources, cross-checking war archives, and crafting the story with care. He invited Tovin as guest of honor. Tovin resisted at first, said crowds weren't his world. But when Jace framed it as Constance's moment, he agreed. She'd have liked being remembered, he said quietly. The opening night came warm and clear, rare for Harkin's world. The museum, once a plain shipping warehouse, had been transformed over years into something like a cathedral of machines, galleries fanning from a central atrium, exhibits lit to emphasize every curve, terminals translating history into 12 languages, collectors, historians, journalists, and wide-eyed locals gathered as the drape-covered shape waited under the lights. Jace stepped forward, hat brushed, boots polished, nerves buzzing. "Thank you for coming," he began, voice steadier than he felt. "Tonight, you'll see something most people believed was lost forever." He pulled the cover away. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The Phantom Stalker sat gleaming, crystalline rings pulsing gently with deep-water light. This is a Casari Imperial Guard Phantom Stalker reconnaissance hover bike, Jace said. One of roughly 400 built, possibly the only operational example remaining. He gestured, and Tovin stepped up beside him, awkward in formal clothes, but standing tall. Tovin Crench, Jace said, is here because this machine survived through the hands of his grandmother, Constance Merriweather. She served as a medic during the Boundary War. When the Casari world fell, she found this bike, rode it to safety, and protected it for more than 50 years. Tovin cleared his throat, voice thick. She called it the Stalker. She said it felt like it understood her, like it listened. He paused, blinking hard. I think it proved something to her, that beauty could outlast horror. Jace nodded and placed a hand on the bike's plating, a gesture that had become his own quiet ritual. The Casari believed technology could remember. He told the crowd, I don't pretend to fully understand what that means, but I know this. When I asked this machine to wake, it did. He swung onto the seat. The audience leaned back, murmuring, excitement rising. Zira stood near the exit, with the expression of someone preparing to file insurance claims in advance. Jace engaged the bike. The rings brightened. The Stalker lifted, smoothly, soundless as a shadow. He made a slow circuit of the gallery, low and controlled, letting everyone see the impossible. A dead civilization's craft moving again, graceful and silent, alive with light. When he landed, applause hit like thunder. Later, when the crowd thinned and the museum quieted, Jace found Tovin standing alone beside the display case. Tears traced the older man's cheeks, but he was smiling. She would have loved this, Tovin said, hearing them gasp, seeing them look at it like it mattered. She saved something precious. Jace replied, not for herself alone, for anyone who needed proof that the past still has teeth. Tovin touched the glass gently, his reflection overlapping the bike's glow. I almost kept it hidden, a private memorial. But she didn't save it for a closet. No. Jace agreed. She saved it to be seen. They stood together, in silence. Two lives intersecting through one woman's stubborn care and one machine's improbable survival. Outside, indifferent stars wheeled over the fields. Inside, in the Wakefield Collection's quiet glow, the Phantom Stalker rested dim, now, but ready to shine again whenever someone needed reminding that impossible was often just another word for not yet.